Croeso pawb. Mwyn dathlu diwrnod hawliau gofalwyr, rydym wedi gweithio gyda'n partneriaid i gyflwyno rhaglen lawn o sesiynau ar-lein am bynciau allweddol sy'n gysylltiedig â'r diwrnod hawliau gofalwyr. Bydd y sesiynau hyn yn cael eu cynnal rhwng mis Hydref y blwyddyn yma a diwedd mis Mawrth 2021. Cewch fwy o wybodaeth am hynny ar y diwedd. Hon yw'r pumed o'n sesiynau gyda'r Ymddiriedolaeth Gwasanaeth Ambiwlans Cymru. Welcome all. In order to celebrate Carers' Rights Day 2020, we've worked with our partners to bring you an entire programme of online sessions on key topics. These are linked to Carers' Rights Day, and these run from October this year right through until the end of March 2021. More information on that at the end of this recording. This is the fifth of our Carers' Rights Day sessions with the Wales Ambulance Services Trust. Rwyf yn awr felly yn eich trosglwyddo chi I Isabel a Leanne. So I will now hand over to Isabel and Leanne.
Diolch, thanks Catherine. So my name is Leanne Hawker. I'm Head of Patient Experience and Community Involvement in the Welsh Ambulance Service. I will say as a national service, we do welcome all feedback and questions through the medium of Welsh. So if anybody would like to get in touch with us with any questions, we'll be happy to answer them and get back to colleagues. So I would like to hand over to Isabel at this point.
Croeso a diolch. My name is Isabel Jones and I work for the Welsh Ambulance Services Trust Patient Experience and Community Involvement team, Leanne's team. And basically, we are very pleased to be able to welcome you to this workshop today. The title of the workshop today is Being Prepared for the What If. How the Welsh Ambulance Service can help you think ahead. So the themes and points we're going to be covering today will be along these lines. What carers have told us about our Carers Survey 2020 and carers events. Your health, preparing for winter. Welsh Ambulance Service Trust tips on preventative measures you can take and helpful ways to plan ahead. And we're going to look a little bit at the My Backup tool and being prepared for emergencies and ways to stay involved with the Welsh Ambulance Service Trust. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Leanne, who's going to take you through some of the themes that came out of our most recent Welsh Ambulance Service Carers Survey. Over to you, Leanne.
Okay, so thanks Isabel. So we've been engaging continuously with carers as well as just completing our second annual carers survey. And what we've heard from carers relate very strongly to the impact of COVID and also non-COVID issues. So carers have been very clear with us and they've told us that due to the current pandemic and the safety measures implemented to reduce people's risk of coronavirus, it has impacted heavily on their mental health and well-being. The lack of social care services and respite care have also impacted on people, particularly where they've seen those services reduce or stop altogether as a consequence of the pandemic. And of course, people's concerns around their own health, if they become ill, if they are at risk of COVID and other contributing factors. COVID-19 has most definitely increased pressure on carers due to the reduction in these services, and there has been a noticeable decline in their own conditions. Also concerns around shielding and looking after the person that they are caring for, and the reduction in their ability to leave their own home has impacted again on their mental health and well-being. We've had staff who are also carers and they said similar things to what we've heard from unpaid carers, and it's a similar picture, reporting and feeling increased pressure, trying to do their job and care. But as a service, we've also noticed a huge increase in the amount of safeguarding referrals as a result of the breakdown of the carer role, where care packages are no longer sufficient or they're just not, effective anymore for people. And as a consequence, carers, their own health is deteriorating, they are becoming quite poorly, and then our crews are spending a lot more time with people that they care for, trying to set up care for them. So carers have been very clear with us on some of the things that we need to be more in tune with. carers have told us we need to recognise their knowledge as a carer and the sort of knowledge they have about the person they care for, particularly around any rare or long-term conditions. Carers report having experienced long waits for an ambulance response or a callback, but then when we do respond, it's invariably excellent care. But most definitely waiting for a long response is something that we've heard quite regularly. Increased pressure, again, because of decline in services and the ability of people's routines being affected has had a negative impact on them. And we've heard as well from carers how appropriate information from WAST on information, when it would be appropriate to use the service, where can they access information. You know, there has been so much information available during the pandemic that people have got confused as to where do they go for this information. So taking all that on board, you know, I think as an ambulance service going into the winter now, we want people to be prepared. We want people to be prepared for the what if, and for carers to start thinking ahead. You know, we are now into one of our busiest times of the year, winter, and all the winter pressures that hit the wider NHS and us as an ambulance service. So today we really want to talk about being prepared. How can the ambulance service, how can you help the ambulance service to be an effective service in its response to carers? So before I just go into some of the information that we would like to share with you around being prepared, is there anything, Isabel, you'd like to say at this point?
No, nothing to add apart from the fact that it's been a great pleasure to engage with carers over the last couple of years. And unfortunately, most of our events have now had to go online, but we were meeting people face to face, and we'd had set up and had 2 very successful events, both in Ceredigion and in Merthyr Tydfil. So yeah, so it's been great. So we hope that we'll have a good response now as people give us their feedback from today as well. So shall we look at your health, preparing for winter first of all? It's really, really important, as Leanne was saying, to be prepared. And in many ways, prevention is the old adage, prevention's better than cure. So we need you to think very carefully about what you can do to keep yourself well and safe. For example, there's the common sense things like eating well and staying warm. Do people know about the Nest home efficiency scheme, home energy efficiency scheme? Do we know about these things which are available for us to apply for? We also want you to think very carefully about prevention and looking after your health, maybe thinking, have you got that flu jab that you need to get? You know, because now's the time to get the flu jab. For example, do you have a well-stocked medicine cabinet? And have you thought about going to the pharmacy and seeing what you can do to have things ready just in case? The other thing is that, you know, if you have any equipment for the person you cared for, have you had it maintenance checked recently? And have you got a list of important contact numbers that you could contact in an emergency? The important thing to think about is, would it be better to do online shopping or arrange for another family member to help in some ways, perhaps some of the time, so that it doesn't always fall on the carer, you yourself as the carer. And the other thing is, as the weather gets colder and it gets more icy and cold underfoot, and all the different things we need to think about there, what can we do to prevent falls? Because falls are a big call on our service, and so we need to think about, you know, are those slippers a bit worn that we've been wearing around the house, and do we really need to go out to the garden to do something when it could be done quite as well indoors? You know, have we checked that there's no trip and slip hazards around the house? Those kind of things. So to do a little risk assessment for yourself around the house and check if there's any worn rugs that are likely to slip, or any parts of the floor which are prone to spills, and any places in the house where you could catch your foot on something. So those are the kind of things to think about in terms of your health, but also really important, don't ignore your symptoms. Make sure that you get those symptoms checked out. Don't let them become a bigger problem than they need to be. It's well documented that conditions such as sepsis always have a preliminary health-related cause. There's always something lurking in the background with sepsis that could have been treated earlier. For example, tooth problems, abscess, a urinary tract or water infection, a cut or a wound that hasn't healed, or maybe other things such as if a person is catheterized and are more prone to urine infections. So these are the kind of things that if you get these symptoms, or even chesty colds and flu-like symptoms, to get yourself checked over, and don't ignore those symptoms, because as we know from all our experience, there's always something like that lurking in the background when somebody then becomes a lot worse with sepsis. And if they sought help at the earlier stage, it could have prevented the worst condition. And that's the last thing we want to see, isn't it? Is for the carers, like we've seen today, talked today, to become unwell, you know, yourselves, when you've got someone else who's relying so heavily on you. So that's a little bit about your health. Leanne, anything to add to that one?
No, I think I would just reiterate that, you know, we know from carers that we've been engaging with that quite often their responsibilities are so, you know, they're so responsible for the people that they care for that quite often they may neglect their own health, or feel they just haven't got the time to deal with their own health. And often they will come into contact with us as an emergency service at the last stage, you know, because their health has not improved. So when we do end up coming into contact with a carer for themselves, it's often because they've put off contacting or seeking advice prior to it become an emergency. And then we end up then in a situation where carers have been very reluctant, where they've needed to go into hospital, because they're very concerned then about, well, who's going to look after the person that I care for? Especially if there's no emergency care plan. So as a carer, first and foremost, please, you know, be thinking, what would happen if I was unwell? Who would care for the people or the person I care for? So as a carer, we would want to reiterate that you need to think about your own health and well-being, because if you are not looking after yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you at some point to be able to maintain your caring responsibilities. So we do, as Isabel said, you know, there's so much information out there around maintaining good health. It sounds really simple and really basic about keeping warm, eating healthily, doing basic risk assessments in the home, because it may not be something you're obvious, you know, you may be thinking, oh, it's an obvious thing I need to do. But the amount of calls that we get where somebody has tripped in the home or in the back garden and have fallen, because falling is not a normal part of aging, and it's not even a normal thing to do. But often the calls we get for people who have fallen, it's because they've tripped. They've tripped going down the stairs because there may be something on the stairs. They've just nipped out the back garden to put the washing out or bring it in. They've tripped over the most inane things. You know, it's been slippery or slippers or whatever the problem is. And when you then fall, and it's not life-threatening, you have fallen, you can't get up, you may have broken an ankle, you may have twisted an ankle. We know that right now going into winter, you may be waiting a long time for us to get to you. And if you are outside and it's wet and it's cold, and if you're outside for any length of time, it's going to become a real problem by the time we do get to you. And then there's lots of other issues around hypothermia, pressure ulcers, all those other things that can happen. So in order to prevent this, you know, and falls is such an important one, I think, Isabel, isn't it, to mention, because when we've responded to people who've fallen, they haven't gone out knowing it's dangerous, they could fall. Falling is the last thing on their mind, but it's happening. And around 10% of all the calls to the ambulance service is because somebody's fallen. So that is something I would particularly stress now about being prepared and looking after yourselves.
It's Catherine Moyle here from the Carers Unit. Just to add to what the both of you said there, some really sound advice. what some carers may not be aware of is that there is actually a carer's emergency card that can also help with contingency and emergency planning, and that's provided and backed up by Ceredigion County Council. It's described as a credit-sized card that you, the carer, can carry at all times. It's used as an instant source of identification in case you suffer an accident or sudden illness. Social care will hold your details so that help can be put in place through your chosen emergency contacts for the person you care for. And that is something that's available for any carer within Ceredigion through Ceredigion County Council's Click team. Just ring them up and they can send you the publication out. And that is something that can often give carers, and that carers have told us in Ceredigion, gives them real peace of mind to know that should something untoward happen to them, they've got peace of mind to know that that's something that they can hand over to somebody from the emergency services, and that process can then be triggered. So it gives them peace of mind just to have it on their person, and can also help in addition to the various things that you have suggested, Leanne and Isabel, all of which are very, very sensible. Thank you. I'll hand back over to Isabel.
So basically, we've covered a few tips on some of the preventative measures you can take, and we do hope that you find these as helpful ways to plan ahead. For example, another thing you need to think about is that our ambulance crews may not automatically come out to remove the person who's unwell and take them into hospital, because nowadays we do treat at home a lot more than we used to, and there are situations where our crews come out and they're very, very concerned because they find that the situation is that maybe the carer has become unwell who cares for somebody else, and we end up, as Leanne has mentioned, having 2 people going into hospital then instead of 1. Or else the agonising worry that the carers have about, if I leave, what will happen to the person I'm caring for. So the next things we need you to think about really is about having a backup plan in place, and a very robust one at that. But before that, I just want you to take a little thought about your mental health and well-being. Leanne just mentioned on it just earlier, and we've spoken to carers all over Wales at different times, and at the best of times, the job of being a carer can really erode a person's sense of well-being and mental health. But particularly around this time, since we've been in the middle of a pandemic, this situation has almost magnified that for everybody in the population. But I do understand from our carer survey, as Leanne has said, that it's affected carers' mental health and well-being a lot more. Because of the extra demands being placed and the withdrawal of existing well relied upon services. So this is something that we can signpost you to as a trust. If you go onto our Welsh Ambulance website, we have and our NHS Wales 111 website, there is a signpost there to the Silver Cloud, which is mental health support, and it's available for everybody in the community. It's basically, it is an online resource, but with the added benefit of, for a period of, I believe it's about 12 weeks, there will be a level of online mentoring by a trained group of individuals who are behind the scenes supporting people through this online course. And it's an extremely excellent resource supported by Welsh Government, and you can find out more about it by going on those websites, but also you can find out about it on our 111 Wales website as well. And it's really good to have in mind a couple of useful website links, telephone numbers, helplines, so that when you're feeling the need to get some me time support for your needs, then there are excellent helplines out there that can really, really give a great deal of support for you as an individual in your caring role, just being you, just coping with the day-to-day strains of life. So it's good to plan ahead for your well-being as well, and plan when those breaks are going to be, when those opportunities are going to be for you to have a little bit of you time, have a quiet half an hour in the bath or listen to some music. And even if you can't get out and do much, it's really, really important that you find those times, even if they're micro times within the day, when you can find ways of switching off and taking yourself off that treadmill and becoming more relaxed to cope with the rest of your day. Because if you go unwell, both mentally or physically, then your loved ones are going to be struggling. So it's important to look after yourself in all those ways. So I'm going to now go into a little bit about the My Backup tool. We've partnered with Carers Trust and spoken to them about this, and we've promoted their My Backup tool on our info bursts and on our correspondence. The My Backup tool, just to say a little bit about it, is an excellent way of being like an online assistant, which helps you as a carer to think about a contingency plan. For example, it's not linked with any central systems or saved within the local authority as a source of information, but the tool itself guides you through a number of questions. For example, a list of the cared for person's medication. Have you got that to hand? Are there any pets that need looking after? Who holds the power of attorney if appropriate? After completing this, it'll highlight areas which you need to consider in the future or think about or get information about, and it'll help you plan then for where there are gaps in your knowledge. And you can help put those things then, when you find out more about them, onto your contingency plan. It'll help you to keep together all the important contact details in case of emergency. For example, healthcare professionals and website links and other sources of information. Now, this is the My Backup tool. However, Carers Trust also provides referral support and signposting, and can guide you to a number of sources of information, which will help you if you need to think about making a referral for your loved one to have extra support. Also, Age UK and Age Cymru are another source of referral support. But the Carers Trust also separately have another app called Jointly, which is used for sharing information between those caring for their loved one. And it's a link, and for both these information, both the My Backup tool and the Jointly app, you can find out more by contacting them, the Carers Trust, on their website. But we would really endorse this approach to have a robust contingency plan in place, especially approaching the winter months. As Leanna's pointed out, there are so many more risks out there, and there are so many more demands on our service this year on account of the situation that we find ourselves in with a worldwide pandemic. So we really would encourage you to think about these tools that will help you plan and put things in place in case of emergencies, so that if the time comes, and we hope you don't need, but if you did need, you've got it all to hand, and you know where to turn. And I'm glad also that Catherine's mentioned the Carers Emergency Card Scheme. Some local authorities don't do this. I'm glad to hear the Ceredigion do. However, the Carers Trust, Carers Wales also provides a carers card. So if people watching this who are not from Ceredigion and live further afield, which I'm sure will be the case because we're an online world as we speak, then be mindful of the fact that Carers Wales also provides access to information about their carers card, which does exactly the same kind of thing for those people whose local authorities may not have one. So yeah, that's a little bit about the tool. Anything else, Leanne, that I've missed out there? Is there anything we need to add to that?
No, I think you've covered everything, but to underline again what you're saying, carers, we really need you to think ahead, think about the what if, and to look after yourselves. I think as an ambulance service, I would reiterate that, we prioritise calls into the 999 emergency room based on responding to the sickest patient first. Now, we use what we call a medical priority dispatch system that uses information that the caller will provide to us in response to our scripted questions, and your answers then will determine what advice needs to be given and how the call should be prioritised. And you may be aware that you know, allocators will determine the correct response and will dispatch the appropriate resource. Sometimes that can be an emergency ambulance, sometimes a rapid response vehicle or a community first responder. But where appropriate, the patient may receive telephone advice via paramedics or nurses based in our control rooms or clinical contact centres, as we refer to them as. Now, the reason why I stress, you know, what Isabel is saying, it's important to look after yourself, because if you do end up ringing 999, and the way that we prioritise is based on the sickest patient first. The sickest patient is based on the level of clinical emergency. So we will categorise a red call, and a red call is where a patient's life is in immediate danger. And that could be someone's in cardiac arrest and they're receiving CPR, someone is choking, or there's ineffective breathing. So those calls will always get an 8-minute emergency dispatch straight away. An awful lot of our calls end up in amber, because red emergency calls are a percentage of our calls, but the largest number of calls are in the amber category. And these calls refer to patients that have conditions that may need treatment, and we need to get to them quickly, and they need care at scene or a fast transport to another healthcare facility. And those patients are prioritised on the basis of the clinical need, and if necessary may receive a blue light response. And we hear a lot from carers who, particularly if they're caring for elderly people who've fallen and can't get up, and it's a genuine emergency for them because they're worried that the person they care for is on the floor, they're distressed, and if they're outside and it's cold and it's raining. But we are prioritising based on the emergency clinical need. We can take on board the environment in which people find themselves in, but bearing in mind the way that we respond to calls is based on the emergency clinical need. And we get an awful lot of calls that we categorise as green. Now, these are non-serious calls which can often be managed by other healthcare services, including telephone advice or through self-care. And an awful lot of these green calls, you can imagine, are going to wait a long time. And if you, as a carer, find yourself in a situation where, you know, the person you care for has run out of their asthma medication, or you find yourselves in acute dental pain and it's a bank holiday, or you know, it's one of those situations where it's an emergency to you, but it may not be a clinical emergency. So it is so vitally important that, you know, if it is life-threatening, of course you ring 999, but be aware of what other services exist in your area. So whether it's, if you have access to the internet, and you can go onto the NHS 111 Wales website, because there are 32 self-assessment symptom checkers on the website that you can undertake. And those symptom checkers range from toothache to generally unwell to eye pain, abdominal pain. You know, there's 32 of them, and we would strongly recommend do a self-assessment first, and that will tell you where you need to go. There are other services as well. There's lots of GP out of hours. You know, get familiar with what that number is. If there's a minor injury unit in the area, because often A&E departments can get very busy, be aware of when the local pharmacists are available. And again, the NHS 111 Wales website has a directory of services that will have all of the services that are available, both in hours and out of hours, because we know 5 o'clock on a Friday, if it's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong out of hours and on the weekend. And we're a service that's not going to say no, because we are 24/7. A lot of services may not be. So it is vitally important that you know where you can access information on other services that are available and what time are they open. And then that way, you know, you will have that level of understanding of what support will exist for you for minor ailments or general ailments. because in an emergency, we would strongly advocate you ring 999. Now, I think it's important, Isabel, to stress as well that as an ambulance service, there are things we are doing to prepare for the winter. There are things we are doing as well to make sure we give you the best response we can. So as part of our winter preparedness, we have been working with all of the local health boards, all 7 of them in Wales, and other key partners to develop new approaches to ensure people who think they need access to either us, the emergency ambulance service, or the emergency departments, then they can access advice, care and information through a contact first approach. Now, this will help people to access clear, professional advice based on which service is best suited to meet their needs. And people can be provided with more appropriate advice or care, or where appropriate, be directly booked in for an appointment at the emergency department. This has stemmed from the pandemic. We, very early on in the pandemic, calls to the emergency services dropped off. Similarly, emergency departments noticed that there was an awful lot of people just stopped turning up in A&E departments. And we now know it was because people were frightened to be exposed to COVID. They were either shielding, or the advice at the time to stay home and protect the NHS really struck home. People did everything they could to protect the NHS. But the flip side to that was there was an awful lot of people who needed to be in the emergency department, and there was an awful lot of people who should have rung us. And this work around the phone first has stemmed from that, because what we don't want to go back to is having lots of people sitting in emergency departments, lots of people queuing on our telephony system for a callback. Because if you're sat in a busy A&E department, you know, we don't know if anybody's got symptoms of COVID, what are the risks? So the National Phone First initiative has really stemmed from the learning from COVID. So we as a Welsh ambulance service have been working with health boards and other colleagues in looking to establish this system. So we've developed an implementation plan to enhance the current 111 service that is available in Wales, and those areas where it is available, and to begin to provide the 111 phone first service. Now, the work has been trialled in a part of Wales at the moment, which is in the Aneurin Bevan area, or Gwent area is where we're piloting this, but it is a feature that will be rolled out across Wales. So over this winter, we will be looking at the impact of the phone first. So again, it's vitally important for you as a carer to know what services, what is happening in your locality, because if it is an emergency, 999. If it's not life-threatening, you can ring 111, or you can go onto the website. But then as we go through the winter, you know, as this phone first becomes more established, you know, there will be more information available through our website, and we'll be happy to come and talk to people in more detail about that. So we are doing a lot behind the scenes to ensure that as we go through the winter, we as an ambulance service are prepared to be able to respond. But we also need the public to do their bit. And Isabel mentioned some very important things, particularly around stocking up medicines, because if you follow the Welsh Ambulance Service on Twitter, you will see that we are regularly asking the public to be prepared for a minor illness or injury, and to always keep a well-stocked first aid kit at home, and keep on top of your medication, and as Isabel said, to generally look after your health. So so I think, Isabel, it was important for us to explain as well what we are doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Leanne. And it's lovely to think that all this has been going on, and that, you know, we're doing all that we can, but it would be lovely to think that now that we've had this workshop, that it would be a good way of raising awareness to ask the general public and carers and anybody who may be watching this how important it is to be prepared. And so thank you for that. That's great. I wanted to spend a little bit of time now talking about ways that you can stay involved with the Welsh Ambulance Service. We love to hear from you. We want to know if you did have to call on us or use our 111 service or our symptom checkers, or if you've accessed any of our websites, or if you've received our regular info bursts. We want to know how this is for you. We want to know how the service was. We want to know if we could improve on anything, or if you could help us share your story with us to help us learn or help us to know what we're doing well. So your thoughts matter to us, and they will help to influence how we plan for the future. So if you did call on any of our services now in the build up to the winter, or at any time, there's many ways you can have your say and let us know how that was. For example, there is our website, which has a section called Have Your Say, and you can tell us all about your story and give us your feedback online. If it went well for you, tell us what went well, and if it didn't go well for you, tell us what we could do differently. Make a suggestion, help us to hear your voice. For example, you can also tell us what you think by contacting us, and our info burst has a regular list of the contact details and the emails that you can contact us, and the website also says you can contact us at the Patient Experience and Community Involvement Team, PECI. So please do email us, or you can contact us through the online Have Your Say, or ring us, and we'd love to hear from you. Just a little bit of forward planning into the future. We are also developing a new network to involve patients in helping us plan for the future. It's called the IN network, so it'll be coming out on the info burst, so which we send to Catherine here regularly, and so I'm sure Catherine will roll out and make people aware as the info bursts come in that there's some important information there about ways to find out about the IN network, which is pretty much on the horizon for the new year. But the other thing is, in partnership with Ceredigion, with Catherine's team, we've had the privilege of being able to contribute to your wonderful magazine, which I've seen, and it is amazing. And you've been able to put in there that there's a speech bubble feedback, whereby if anybody would like to write a few lines, tell us if you've used any of our ambulance services, whether it's our non-emergency or our emergency, or our 111 services or our website services, or received our info burst, and you'd like to tell us a little bit of feedback about that. You can write it down on the piece of paper that's in the magazine. Make sure that you write your address and contact details so that we can get back in touch with you. You don't have to give your name, and it can be completely anonymous, but we do need an address to send a nice goodie bag for you, a gift bag. And the gift bags we're sending to say thank you for your feedback will be a lovely first aid kit, a little first aid kit, a hygiene hand gel spray, a Welsh ambulance pen and notepad. So that once we received your feedback, we will send that to you as a thank you for letting us know your thoughts, because they matter to us and we love to hear from people. So we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you for listening to the workshop today, and please do let us know if there's any other ways that we can engage with you in future workshops, if there's any particular area you'd like us to talk to you about. So we're delighted to be here today, and I'd like to thank Catherine for inviting us. Catherine would like to show us something on the magazine, I believe, yes? Is that what you're showing us?
That's correct. Thank you, Isabel. All I wanted to say was it's actually on the magazine and the pull-out page, and the Ceredigion Carers magazine is page 47. There's the magazine, dyma'r cylchgrawn yn Gymraeg. A wedyn, mae dau copi gennym ni. Mae copi Cymraeg a copi Saesneg. So we have two copies this year because it's a bumper edition. So that's the Cymraeg I've just showed you there. And then page 47. So this is the page, it's the back page. Tudalen Kevin, yn y cylchgrawn Ceredigion, cylchgrawn y Gofalwyr Ceredigion. So it should be there for those of you who are resident in Ceredigion, and you can, if you haven't signed up to the Carers Information Service and got a copy of that, you can actually download a copy of the magazine so that you can see where the speech bubble is on page 47 to input your information, and all the details to contact either Leanne or Isabel to give your feedback will actually be on that page as well. So you can do it digitally, or if you've got the paper copy, you can tear it out and send it back free post as well. So there's both options there, as we've tried to offer as many options as possible. And if you're not part of the Carers Information Service, then it's a free service to sign up to. You would get that magazine either by post or email 3 times a year, as well as many other notifications. Thank you,
Well,
Diolch.
thank you for
Nôl
that.
I chi, Isabel. Back to you.
Leanne, have you got anything more to add regarding ways to stay involved?
No, I think you've covered everything, but just to give another shout out to the launch of the new In network that will be coming out towards the end of January in the new year. The new In network will offer opportunities for anyone to get involved with some service improvement activities and have your voices heard within the ambulance service. So you will be able to influence our planning, our thinking around new services. So we are really going to be opening up the opportunity for the public to get involved in a whole range of service improvement activities.
So I'm handing back to Catherine now. So thank you all for listening, and it's been a pleasure, hasn't it, to be here today. Thank you. Back over to you, Catherine.
On mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you. We all fall foul of mute now and then. Thank you so much to Isabel and Leanne for that hugely helpful and informative presentation. As it happens, I've got a few questions from carers, if it's okay with yourselves, that I'm going to just pose to you and invite either one of you to respond while we're still online. It would be really interesting just to sort of fill in these little gaps, really. We have a lot of residents in Ceredigion who are either in not spots in terms of internet, or who may not have the means to access things digitally. Now you did, Leanne, you commented on the telephone-based service that is being trialled at the moment. One thing I would add to that is that in the Harolwg Health Board area, when somebody wants to contact their out-of-hours GP, they can, the number to call is actually 111 here, and that covers Ceredigion, Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire. So although we're aware of that service, are there any other ways that members of the public and carers and the people they care for can get in touch with yourselves or find out some of the other information from yourselves if they don't have internet access, apart from the example that the pilot project that you've given us an example?
Yeah, so within the 111 service, there is a team of health information advisors. Now, health information advisors, they work alongside the nurses, but they are able to give callers a range of localized information. And it would be the same type of information that you would be able to get if you had internet access. So information advisors can give you anything from information about a condition somebody may have and they may want to know more about it. So a fact sheet or a leaflet about diabetes or, asthma, whatever the condition is, but they can also provide information on local services. They have access to a directory of services that covers not just NHS services, but covers health and well-being services. So everything from the local self-help support networks through to acute responsive services, local authority services. It may be that somebody needs adaptations to the home. It's not just around health. It covers the whole health and social care spectrum. So if people are in an area that has got internet, you know, they're not able to access the internet, or they don't know what other services are available, if they do ring 111, they can speak to a health information advisor. So, I mean, it's important people know that, because a lot of people may just think that there are nurses there and you only ring if you feel unwell. There is the health information team that will be able to facilitate access to all that information, and they also can post information out to people if they want it posted to them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's hugely helpful, because I know there are a great deal of people, as I said, living in Ceredigion who may not have either access or may have really hit and miss or sketchy access to the internet. I think it was Isabel actually that mentioned the info burst that you yourselves produce. Could you, or one carer is asking, well, how can I sign up for your info burst? Where do I, you know, is it something that you can sign up for and receive regularly, be put on a mailing list, or if not, how do I get a copy? Over to you, Isabel.
No problem at all. We have a distribution list as we speak, which covers all the main third sector and statutory organisations and any number of community groups that have over the years passed on their contact details to us. And we do, for the main part, rely on, when we send the info bursts out, we totally expect people to spread them as wide as they can to all the contacts. So we want to network with all the main organisations, and we ask them to network out with all their contacts. However, again, over the years, we've made contacts with many community groups, and the list is forever growing, I have to say. The distribution list is getting bigger and bigger, and anybody who wants to be on the distribution list as an individual, there's no problem with that, because I'll just add them to the distribution list. So if they wish to, they can email us on the Patient Experience and Community Involvement team. It's called the PECI mailbox, and you can get that email address through our website, and just they can request to be on our information burst distribution list, and they'll be put on there. And the info burst comes out every month, but over the COVID-19 lockdown periods, it often came out more than once a month, depending on the needs, but it usually comes out once a month, and it looks back on the previous month, and it projects ahead to things that are happening, health campaigns, etc., for the month that lies ahead. So, but we'd be delighted to add anyone to the information burst distribution list, no problem at all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Isabel. Much appreciated. And for anybody that's listening, that email address, the PECI email address that you mentioned there, I can see it's on our page 47 that I referred to earlier. It's PECI.team at wales.nhs.uk. And we can include that email address for correspondence with the recording of this Q&A session, actually, of this talk, when it goes up on the carers' web pages. And one final question then, the new in network that you mentioned, I think this is more for Leanne. Leanne covered this particular one. One carer said, well, it sounds great, I'm really excited. How do I find out more? How will we find out more as the new in network goes live then? Because it sounds like it's very much in the early stages and you haven't launched fully yet. How, or, you know, what's your plan to tell members of the public, those who do have internet and those who don't have internet, so that they can participate in whichever way they can? Thank you, Leanne.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is at an early stage with our communication planning. We have developed a series of little promo clips that we will be distributing out through several multimedia platforms, but we're going to be relying on lots of people as well to share word of mouth. Now, because the in-network is going to be such an important component of the Trust's new quality strategy, and people may be aware as well that in Wales it's now become a bill, the Quality and Engagement Bill, and the citizen voice component of that is where the in-network, we hope, will amplify people's voices. So what we will be doing between now and January is we are working very closely with our communication team within the ambulance service and regional communication teams with the health boards to help us get this information out. We will be using the info bursts as well to share registration details. So if people want to sign up either individually or as a group or part of a community group, there will be registration details. So what we are planning is to try and saturate as many points of contact that exist where we know and we think people are likely to access and receive information. So regular info burst bulletins, sending them out to all the contacts far and wide to promote registration details. Once we have your details on our list, then we will be working very closely with you, because the other thing we're working on behind the scenes is a menu of service improvement activities. And what is exciting is that it's not just going to be the PECI team in the Welsh Ambulance Service that you will be working with, it's all the teams in the ambulance service who will want to invite you in to these service improvement activities. So it's going to be our operational team that deliver the blue light service, the 999 team and the call centre teams. It will be our 111 teams. It will be our equality team, our HR department that looks at equality and diversity. It'll be our performance and planning team. So it's really got the whole organisation behind this. So even colleagues who may not work with the PECI team but work with our other colleagues around the ambulance service, they will be disseminating this information out as well. So we're going to be relying on an awful lot of people to share as well. But once we've got you, then you will be part of that network.
Fantastic, thank you. That's really comprehensive. It's really helpful. Was there anything else that either of you wanted to share or clarify before we bring the session to a close then?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we are always really, wanting to get into conversation with service users. So the one thing that I would want to say before I leave today is, please get in touch with us. If you have had a service that has not met your expectations, or if you feel you've not had a good service, you may have had a brilliant service and you want to tell us about it. Whatever the reason, I would welcome people to get in touch with us and have that conversation with us and share those experiences with us. Is there anything you would want to add?
I did wonder whether the recording of this video, because it's so relevant for this time of year, could be, we could do a link to it on our forthcoming info burst that's due to go out. And I wondered how you'd feel about that. Because I do feel that between Leanne and myself and yourself, Catherine, we've covered an awful lot of ground, which isn't only relevant to carers in Ceredigion. And I was just wondering, I just suddenly had this thought, and I'm speaking of just on impulse really, but I wondered if it might be a good opportunity to see if we could send a link on the next info burst for this workshop. Because it's very up-to-date information that people need to know, and the wider the reach, the better. Thank you.
Absolutely, I'd wholeheartedly support that, and I'm sure my colleagues in the carers unit and Ceredigion County Council would support that. We are very proud of the fact that we support carers so wholeheartedly across Ceredigion, and we do work very closely with partners across the whole of our region, and absolutely, we're always for supporting unpaid carers, even if that is on the fringes and the boundaries of our county. So yes, absolutely, I think that would be a really lovely way to promote some of the information, and I'm sure it's how some carers in Ceredigion would find out about it as well. So yes, that's a lovely idea.
And our Welsh Ambulance key messages are all going to be the same anyway,
yes,
across the country. These are the key messages we really need to get out to people at this time of the year, isn't it? So Leanne and I, sort of these are the messages that are really, really important, and they've come out of the surveys and all our engagements over the last year or so, isn't it, Leanne? So, you know.
So what you're saying essentially is that carers and the people they care for have actually been contributing into this, and what you're bringing out now is actually already the result of what carers and those that they care for have already been shaping.
Yes.
So it's a fantastic
Absolutely.
foundation on which you know, carers can confidently engage with yourselves to know that that's a process that's already firmly embedded in your organisation, which is music to our ears. You know, it's a very positive place to be. So thank you both so much for the talk. I'll just close the session if you don't mind. Just i dweud diolch yn fawr iawn I Isabel a Leanne am siarad heddiw. Thank you so much both of you for speaking today. Mae'r manylion o'r sesiynau eraill y diwrnod hawliau gofalwyr ar gael ar dudalen Facebook Cyngor Sir Ceredigion a gwefan Cyngor Sir Ceredigion o dan yr enw Cymorth I Ofalwyr. So details of the other Carers Rights Day sessions are available on Ceredigion County Council's Facebook page under the event section, and Ceredigion County Council's website under the name Support for Carers. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Hwyl nawr. Goodbye.
Hwyl.